Part of the big reason why Canada and here in Calgary we're experiencing a housing crisis is the three levels of government that we have in Canada have really pulled away from public housing. So in previous decades, public housing was being built by the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. However, now they've largely walked away from that and left housing to the private market. The other problem that Canada has is the public has now viewed what is good housing as private market-built housing, and so that's what we look to now. So we don't look to our government to provide public housing. After the Second World War, policymakers were involved with building housing, and a lot of housing. And the way they did it then is they built out suburbs. And that suburban model worked for a short time. But that isn't how neighborhoods are getting built worldwide. So we really need to take a look at what newcomers coming here are used to and what they can teach us in terms of where we can work, where we can live, where we can play, all simultaneously in the same neighborhood. Copenhagen is a really good example where neighborhoods have been designed where the public infrastructure goes in first, and then very dense neighborhoods get built once that public infrastructure is put there. Includes subways, for example, but we don't think that way here. There's a lot of talk about a lot of immigrants coming to Canada, but the pressure for that immigration is really coming from worldwide wars. So there's more than 100 million displaced people worldwide. And that includes a lot of refugees that are no longer in their country of origin. That is a lot of war, creating a lot of displacement, but it's having an impact here. Really, when we talk about immigration being increased here, we're really responding to that, and it really is a wartime effort that we're involved with. We haven't had the policy catch up to what's going on worldwide. So it's not enough anymore to look at our own population statistics and say, you know, how has Calgary moved in the last little while? But if you want to project in the future about where Calgary is going to move to, we now need to actually consider what's going on worldwide. The other piece of the puzzle is when we take a look at immigration Canada-wide, we see people moving to places like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Is when people try to set themselves up there, they can't. It's just way too expensive, especially in a place like Toronto. Is we get what's called secondary migration or interprovincial migration from those cities of newcomers coming to Calgary because there's much greater economic opportunity here, and the cost of living is far less here as well. I think it's going to take a while for the city to come around and change the policies to speed things up, but that isn't going to stop migration. So I think we're going to be in a very bad situation in a couple of years if things don't change. We know that housing is going to be very, very difficult. So I would expect housing prices and rental prices to increase quite a bit. We're going to see more and more homelessness as this crisis unfolds. We're going to see all of the problems associated with having people live on the streets. And having people not be able to support themselves and be self-sustainable. It's very predictable that that is going to happen. So we're going to see our LRT stations be homeless shelters again in the winter. We're going to see increased rates of crime associated to that, increased violence when you get people living in very close quarters that wouldn't normally live together. All of those kind of things are going to continue to be in the news, and we're going to hear more and more of that. That isn't going to go away until we really get a grip on building public affordable housing. So one of the pieces of the mix that we haven't put into the puzzle about the housing scenario are climate displaced people. So we saw that with all of the people that came from Yellowknife this year. We saw it a few years ago when people came from Fort McMurray to be here. So more and more and more, it could be an annual event where we're dealing with internally displaced people here in Alberta and here in Canada. So we're already seeing that in other areas of the world where people's homes are being destroyed worldwide, where their living situations are being destroyed worldwide, and that's just going to add to the number of displaced people. We think 100 million people is a lot of displaced people now, but it's going to be even more in the future because of climate displacement as well. And so that is just going to add to the pressure of the wartime problem that we're seeing worldwide. So on September 14th and beyond, when the City Council votes on a plan to change their policies to address this crisis, it's really, really important that the city does pass a new way of doing things. So we need far greater transparency in the amount of public housing that is being built, and actually numbers that we can follow. We need things like the 1950s suburban model being challenged, and so that a different way of building neighborhoods is possible. We need to have public land opened up so that on that public land we can see affordable housing being built. We also need to encourage builders to build really quickly so that we can address this wartime effort in terms of housing, but also so that the private side of things, we can build on lots that are sitting empty right now. So there's been a lot of talk about conversion of buildings, but very little talk about filling up empty lots and empty land.